Hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and a great New Year's. Have a Jim Dandy New Year's, matter of fact. Jim Dandy means something excellent of its kind, 1883 in the dictionary. But today, let's talk about vaccinations and virus. Vacca, from the Latin, means cow. Vaccination came from the virus of smallpox. What is the virus of smallpox? It's the pus of a smallpox sore or the infection. It is not debris from cells. What is the pus of a smallpox sore? It is the result of the disease of smallpox, not the cause. This is a false branch of science called isopathy. Isopathy was taught in medical school in the 1800s by Dr. Joseph Lux. Dr. Lux coined the word in 1823 as a tribute to Edward Jenner, the inventor of vaccination, who died in 1823. I call that a tribute from one quack to another. The word isopathy means the product of disease will prevent disease. That is what Edward Jenner did. He took the product of smallpox, the pus, and he injected it into a healthy person and said, now you are protected for life. Thus, the origin of immunity, which does not exist either. There's nothing to be immune from. So I made a CD in 2012, which I just found in an old box. It's about smallpox and vaccination in 1860. See, if you want to know the lies of today, you got to go back to history. So take a listen to this. I'm going to play this CD called Westford Vaccinations. Westford, Massachusetts, that is.
Hi, my name is Jim O'Kelly, and I bring you this important message and truth from Tuesday, May 24th, 1860, from the Boston Medical and Surgical Journal, volume LXII, number 17. About the 1st of February 1860, some of the leading citizens in Westford observed a notice in the Boston Daily Journal of vaccine matter for sale by the city physician of Boston, Dr. H.G. Clark, which represented to be derived from the cow and therefore possessing more fully the genuine vaccine virus. They sent for and obtained 20 quills and 3 scabs at an expense of $6. On February the 10th, this matter was placed in the hands of Dr. James T. Buttrick, who had just removed to this place, and on Saturday and Sunday, February 11 and 12, these quills were used in vaccinating various persons. About 1/4 of these cases were first vaccinations, and only one of the quills took it all, and that imperfectly, being a case of revaccination. 2 of the scabs were placed by Dr. Buttrick in one vial, and one in a separate vial, and snow water was added to the vial containing the 2 scabs on or before Monday the 13th. On the afternoon of Monday the 13th, Dr. Buttrick went to Pelham, New Hampshire, to visit his brother, and while there vaccinated his mother, his brother, his brother's wife, their 3 sons, all young, Charles, Abner, and James, the last 3 being first vaccinations. The vaccine matter was obtained from the single scab kept dry in a vial. Dr. Buttrick states, I used the scab, took it to the mouth of the vial and broke it with a lancet so as to get it out, and then scraped off some and applied it with the point of a lancet and quill. Did not moisten it at the time. Augustus Buttrick swears that the doctor took a scab and opened it, took the matter from it, and did not moisten it. Mrs. Buttrick says, I saw the doctor having nothing except the scab which he did not moisten. Now, what were the results of these vaccinations? Mrs. Polly Buttrick, the mother, age 63, states that in her case it amounted to nothing. No pain or bad effects whatever followed. Augustus Buttrick states, "My arm pained me a day or two after. It itched and was heated, not swelled. It remained in the same state a week or more, having suffered nothing since." Mrs. Emily A. Buttrick swears that an hour after vaccination my arm pained me, and has done so to the present time, which is 3 weeks. Not much swelling, but inflammation set in. Now there is no scab. My arm was healthy before. Charles Buttrick, the oldest boy, says his father was singularly affected. He complained a good deal of his arm a day or two after vaccination. The arm not much inflamed or swelled. His arm now is in good state. The scab fell off in a week or a fortnight. He is as healthy since as before. Abner Buttrick says his father had a rough, ragged scab, which is still on his arm. The sore extended and spread. He complained of his arm, though not much swelled or inflamed. The arm of James Buttrick, aged 5 months. Says his father, after vaccination, exhibited red streaks extending from the sore, soon after it was done, up to the neck. Grew worse. At last the arm was scarlet to the shoulder, swelled badly to the fingers. Previous to this time, he was in good health. James died on Friday morning, 4 days after his vaccination. He had spasms Wednesday evening. Came out of the first, but never out of the second. Was in terrible distress. Mrs. Buttrick, the mother, in her testimony confirms the same statements. Dr. Backholder of Pelham was called on Thursday to the child. Thought the spasms occasioned by worms or indigestion. Said the child could not recover. Said the sickness could not be occasioned by vaccination. That the matter was not long enough in the arm to work, but did not examine the arm. Dr. Buttrick, on his return from Pelham, took the scab from the vial used there and put it into the vial in which the 2 other scabs had been dissolved with snow water. On the 14th of February, or the day after, he put the thread into the same vial, and a small portion of thread was introduced into all arms afterwards vaccinated. February the 16th was the first day Dr. B vaccinated from the dissolved matter, which might have been from 3 to 5 days after the water was first added. Among the number vaccinated that day, and the only ones of whom we have any account given, were 4 children of Cyrus Hambelin, 2 sons and 2 daughters. With one son it had no effect, but with the other and the 2 daughters it had a strange effect, says the mother. Sarah complained of her arm in 10 or 15 minutes afterwards. Next day the arm was inflamed and lame, not much swollen. Friday night she was taken quite sick, and the next morning the arm was very red and swollen, and looked like a large boil. At noon it broke, and discharged yellow matter. Sunday her lips itched and smarted. Monday they broke out very badly and contained so more or less for a week or 2. The arm contained sore, and a scab formed and came off several times. The second daughter, Katie, had a sore arm similar to Sarah's, but no sore lips. Henry, the oldest son, had a sore arm, not so bad, but with some erysipelas following it. These are the only cases noticed at the coroner's inquest as vaccinated on the 16th of February, but there were probably others. February 17th, Dr. Buttrick states that he vaccinated several persons, but neither he nor any other witnesses testify who they were. The presumption is that it did not have much effect. February the 18th, Dr. Buttrick vaccinated quite a number of persons at Forge Village. Among them were Mr. Bostwick, Mr. George Wright, Mrs. Harris, and Mrs. Prescott. The testimony of these persons were not taken before the inquest, but the history and state of their arms correspond very nearly with that of Mr. Wright, which is given below. It seems that Mr. Bostwick was so sick the next day, Sunday, as to take his bed and send for the doctor. The other 3 persons were soon taken dangerously sick, and Mrs. Prescott died on the 14th day after vaccination. February 20th, Dr. Buttrick vaccinated Mr. Samuel Fletcher, his son-in-law, Mr. Sherman D. Fletcher, with others in the family, and some other persons of whom no account is given. Mr. Samuel Fletcher, vaccinated at 4 o'clock p.m. on Monday, became unwell on the same night, sent for a physician the next day. Mr. Fletcher died on Saturday, the 5th day afterwards. Mrs. S.D. Fletcher had more or less erysipelas afterwards, not on his arm, but elsewhere. February 21st, Mr. Ephraim Wright, in the center of the town, and Mrs. Lawrence at Forge Village were vaccinated, and only 1 or 2 other persons are mentioned as vaccinated that day. After the 21st, no persons were vaccinated. As the history and changes of one severe case may represent the whole of this class, that of Mr. Wright, the only one fully reported may here be briefly given. Mr. Ephraim Wright was vaccinated on Tuesday, February 21st, about 11 a.m. Says his daughter, "I saw him an hour after. He complained of feeling the effects of vaccination. Within 6 hours, he could feel it sensibly. Wednesday, his arm looked red on the place vaccinated, as large as a 10-cent piece. Arm swelled and much inflamed. He gave up work, had severe pains in the head, back, and elsewhere, was restless that night. Thursday, the arm swelled and was still more inflamed. He sat up a little. Friday, the arm more swollen and discharged a little. He sat up a short time only. Saturday, the arm was swollen, extending higher and lower, was much inflamed. He got up, but had to retire immediately. Sunday, the arm was swollen to the shoulders and looked very red and somewhat dark. Monday, the arm swelled as much. Not so much pain and color, not so dark. Arm swelled more towards the hand and across the chest. Tuesday, appearance of the arm the same, color red, swollen badly and discharged more freely. This day he lost his reason. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, arm not much changed. Less pain and swelling, but darker color and more discharge. He died Sunday, March 4th, the 12th day after vaccination. The pathological state of Mr. Wright's arm, as described at the post-mortem examination, so far as given is as follows. Dr. Kimball states that the arm of Mr. Wright was difficult to describe. It was in a state of rottenness. Says Dr. Graves, we found the whole arm, the cellular tissue, filled with purulent matter. The disease had extended to the neck, breast, and lungs, which were congested and unhealthy, produced by recent disease. Says Dr. Allen, we found the arm infiltrated with purulent matter, extending even to the bones. The left lung, the side vaccinated, was affected by the disease, but not the right one. There are several points connected with these vaccination cases worthy of particular notice. First, that among 50 or more persons vaccinated, there should have been only one solitary instance of true vaccination, and that a case of revaccination not having a very wholesome run. Here were 20 quills from the city physician's office, Boston, and in all probability charged with virus from 1 or more arms. Not the same as those from which the scabs were obtained, and about 1/4 of these quills were introduced into the arms of persons never before vaccinated. At the same time, though, in a few instances they created some inflammation. In none were there serious and lasting effects. Again, the vaccination from the scabs, either as used at Pelham or in a dissolved state, had no wholesome run whatever. As quite a number of individuals were vaccinated, only from 3 to 5 days after the scabs were dissolved in snow water, it would seem, in the opinion of some of the witnesses, that there might have been at least virtue enough left to work favorably in some one instance. Another striking point deserving notice is that the cases in which the dissolved virus, pay attention to that word, dissolved virus, worked badly, assumed a more violent and dangerous form. The longer the matter had been kept before being introduced, This fact would show that the virus became more and more poisonous in its nature the longer it was kept. Make a note of that, virus and poisonous. Same thing. Another feature peculiar in these cases is the immediate and powerful effect the vaccination produced upon several persons. Mr. Ephraim Wright complained of feeling the bad effects in an hour. Mr. Samuel Fletcher, vaccinated at 4:00 p.m., slept scarcely any that night on account of the pains in his back and hips. He took his bed at 10 o'clock next day and sent for a physician. Mr. Bostwick complained next morning of so much headache, pain in his back, and general uneasiness that he sent for a physician and took to bed. Mr. Price at Forge Valley says his arm, where vaccinated, became swollen within 2 hours. These 4 cases were men having good health at the time and not likely to complain or give up without sufficient cause, not being nervous or affected by any fears. Interesting. The effects of vaccination were not therefore imaginary, but real, and probably under rather than overstated. The vaccinations of Mr. Fletcher and of Mr. Wright were the only violent cases that occurred in the center of Westford, and both died. But at Forge Village, there were 5 persons dangerously affected, of whom only one, Mrs. Prescott, died. They're talking about people, they're talking about numbers here. These were attended by Dr. Kimball of Lowell, who made deep incisions into the arm, which were followed with profuse suppuration, but a long time may elapse before all of them will recover perfect health. So great was the excitement arising from these sudden deaths and other dangerous cases growing out of this vaccination that to satisfy the public, a coroner's inquest was summoned among the case of Mr. Wright, which after various sittings brought in the following result. Ephraim Wright died of Phlegmonous or syphilis on March 4, 1860. The syphilis was caused by vaccination. There are 2 cases for the peculiar result of this vaccination. First, the matter which came from Dr. Clark of Boston and with which this vaccination was done was originally bad. Yeah, there we go again, bad vaccine, right? Bad batch. When put into the hands of Dr. Buttrick. Second, this matter by keeping in solution by Dr. Buttrick of Westford became still worse. The trouble in this case is due to a combination of these 2 causes. The question why vaccination should produce such serious and fatal results was an important one. No kidding. Such was the occasion of the above-mentioned coroner's inquest. Through the result of their verdict, though the result of their verdict is not altogether satisfactory, the leading medical testimony, in fact, near the entire evidence of all the regular members of the profession, went decidedly to prove that the fault was in using vaccine virus changed by its solution in water to a putrid nature, operating as an animal poison. Of course, it wasn't an animal poison before it became poisonous, so was it? These people still spoke double talk back in 1860. This would have been sufficient cause to account for all the facts that came directly and personally to the knowledge of most of the medical witnesses. But it was assumed by the inquest from the commencement that the same effects had virtually arisen from the same matter used in a dry state. Questions were put forth by the foreman of the jury to almost every physician. The result of this inquest was not surprising considering this state of things and was based undoubtedly upon 3 points. 1, that no perfect vaccination resulted from this matter obtained at Boston, either on the quill in the dry state or from the virus dissolved. 2, that several witnesses who evidently had influence with the jury testified positively that erysipelas, scrofula, and syphilis, as well as some other forms of disease, were communicated by vaccination. 3rd, that in 6 cases at Pelham, where the same matter in a dry state was used, it worked badly, resulting in one instance as the probable cause of death. The evidence from this last source rested almost wholly upon the veracity of the attending physician and his relatives, all interested parties, but that it was given under oath and some circumstantial evidence seemed to confirm its correctness, it could not easily be set aside. Were it not for these cases at Pelham, the inquest could not possibly have come to any such result. Dr. Osgood of Westford testified that in the case of one of the Buttrick boys of Pelham, the vaccination was spurious. That means not genuine. Same cop-out. Had the 3 scabs been dissolved on the 11th or 12th of February, and this same matter used at Pelham, the whole facts would have been consistent and could be explained upon strictly scientific principles. How the matter itself could have been of such poisonous nature, it is difficult to explain. Really. John Foy, a student in Dr. Clark's office, testified that he put up these scabs for Westford, that they were obtained from clean and healthy children, that the scabs were of a bright mahogany color, perfectly free from any extraneous substances, and as good and perfect as any he ever saw. More than 3,000 supplies of matter in points and crust have been furnished by Dr. Clark to physicians and public institutions, and several thousand persons within a year have been vaccinated at the office in Boston. But from no one of these had the least complaint ever been heard as to the bad quality of the matter. And why the scabs went to Westford should be different in their nature or in the results of their application, it was impossible to explain. The verdict of the jury may satisfy the mind of the public much better than that of the medical profession. It is impossible for any scientific and thoroughly educated physician to be satisfied with the reported evidence as it came before this coroner's inquest. Perhaps by the publication of this paper, or through some other means, new evidence may spring up from some source which will throw light upon this subject and help to clear away the mystery and reconcile the conflicting statements and evidence in this matter. These vaccination cases at Westford present many important suggestions to the medical practitioner, some of which may be noticed. First, can pure or genuine vaccine virus be ascertained by the looks of the scab alone? Books describe what are called good and bad scabs, but will the form, color, size, and other physical qualities ensure us that the virus is good? Some intimations in the evidence connected with these cases show us that we should be careful about using the edges or the underpart of the scab, that these parts may be composed of purulent matter more or less. Thus much spurious vaccination might occur. And is it not probable that the purest part of the vaccine virus lies in the center of the scab? That here in the soft state, a small circumscribed circle secretes the real vaccine lymph, composing in the hardened state only the central portions of the scab, leaving the other parts made up of more or less purulent matter? If this is the case even of scabs obtained from the perfectly healthy children, it will account for failures in spurious vaccinations where it was not certainly expected. Again, how shall we vaccinate? Most of the testimony on this point favored the practice of using a dry scab, introduced by the point of a lancet. Some moistened the matter and scarified the arm, but do not keep the virus in a dissolved state. No evidence from any good authority was given to sustain the mode of using vaccine matter long dissolved. After a very thorough search in various medical journals and books, we can find no precedent or instruction to encourage or sustain such a mode of vaccinating. The most common principles of chemistry would seem to teach that animal matter, dissolved in water and exposed to heat, would become decomposed and its nature radically changed. Of course, this pus isn't decomposed when it comes out of the cow or the human being in the first place, right? I mean, it's healthy stuff. That's why the body got rid of it. It might in this way become one of the most virulent animal poisons known, reaching in a few days its most poisonous state and afterwards diminishing, if not losing its poisonous nature. If vaccination had ever been performed to any extent with matter in a dissolved state, there would certainly have been some notice or account of it in medical journals or books. If vaccination performed in any way had ever resulted in such a number of deaths as at Westford, there would undoubtedly have been reports of such cases somewhere in medical works. And I want to tell you, I have the books that do report such cases all the time. Another peculiarity in this vaccination is in the use of a thread, saturating it with vaccine matter, and introducing the least particle into the arm. This method is resorted to both for the sake of economy and convenience. The same amount of vaccine matter used in this way would go much further when the virus is expensive, as in the present case, the economy of the thing is quite a consideration with some persons. In none of the testimony before the inquest was there any authority or precedent adduced in favor of using the thread, which could have much weight with a jury or with the public. And the question has arisen whether this thread may not have operated as a foreign substance like a sliver to create an inflammation different from the vaccine matter, and thus change the whole character of the disease. Yeah, right. Another very important inquiry connected with this subject is, can disease be communicated by vaccination? Several of the medical witnesses testify as follows on this point. Says Dr. Kimball, if you get a good scab, regular, I doubt if through that you can transmit any poison from one body to another. You notice he says transmit poison, and the word virus means poison. I don't believe you have anything from it but good virus. Says Dr. Cabot, I do not believe any other than vaccine can be transmitted by a good and perfect scab. Says Dr. Homans, I do not believe anything foreign follows from vaccine matter if the vaccination be perfect. If the scabs were perfect, the perfect fruit of vaccination in shape, size, and look, I cannot conceive that it would produce anything whatever but the vaccine disease, unless it had absorbed something poisonous after leaving the body. Predisposition might interfere and cause erysipelas. In my opinion, says Dr. Jacob Bigelow, it has not been sufficiently proved that other diseases have been conveyed from one individual to another with vaccine matter as such. Dr. John Ware says, I have never seen any dangerous results from vaccination. You know, these guys must have been on the payroll or related to this guy or something, because they're lying out of their teeth. Dr. Henry A. Martin of Roxbury, in his testimony at Westford, says, the only disease, I think, which can be transmitted by vaccination is syphilis. Now, I want you to know, and I'm going to tell you here on the spot, I have other books where pro-vaccine doctors admit syphilis was caused by the smallpox vaccine. Also, leprosy, polio, measles, chickenpox, and every other kind of disease that we've ever had. Against this, Dr. John Homan states that if a patient was suffering from syphilis, I do not believe it would connect itself with the vaccination. If syphilis affected the vaccine, you would not get a proper or perfect scab. Against the above testimony, there were 4 medical persons not connected with a regular profession, through professing much experience in vaccination and authority in such matters, who stated that in their opinions, syphilis, and scrofia in some of its forms are communicated by vaccination and refer to facts within their own knowledge. In respect to communicating by vaccination any disease or humor so-called, it is very desirable that both the medical profession and the community have a good understanding. It is very important here to draw the line between transmission and occasion of disease. In a large majority of the cases where the public are disposed to attribute to vaccination as a cause any appearance of erysipelas or any other disease of an eruptive or scrofulous nature, the vaccination is merely the occasion and not the cause. I'm going to repeat that again. The vaccination is merely the occasion and not the cause. Erysipelas may be prevalent as an epidemic or some other infectious disease at the time of vaccination, or there may be an unfavorable state of health in the person, or a predisposition to scrofulous complaints, which have always lain dormant in the system. And there is your latent virus, my friends. predisposition to scrofulous complaints which have always lain dormant in the system, awaiting an exciting cause for development. Several witnesses refer to such a state of things. Dr. Cabot refers to 2 cases vaccinated with the same matter. One, his own father, who nearly lost his life, and upon the other it had no effect. The fault in the first case arose from constitutional peculiarities. You see, it wasn't a virus, the germ, the pus, it was this guy's system. Dr. Cabot relates several cases in which syphilis followed vaccination, but he could not easily account for it. Dr. Homans mentioned 2 cases of syphilis following vaccination, which he could not well explain unless there was some predisposition to it. He says that vaccination may educe, but not create, syphilis. It's a tough word for me, I'll tell you. Also develop other constitutional diseases. Dr. Bigelow says, I have known 3 cases in which syphilis occurred in a vaccination patient, beginning about the 8th or 9th day. 2 of these proved fatal, but he does not attempt any explanation of them. Dr. John Ware states that he never had a case of syphilis following vaccination, but thinks it's possible through, though a very rare occurrence. There you are again with today's excuses. Very rare. Several of the medical witnesses pronounced the cases at Westford as PHLEGMONOUS or syphilis, and 2 others described them the same as dissection wounds. The inquiry have suggested is, does not an animal poison produce a specific inflammation, having a run and affecting the system unlike any other syphilis? Would not a different cause entirely unlike any other produce a distinct and specific disease? In the 7 worst cases at Westford, there was a remarkable resemblance as to all the leading symptoms and effects, both local and general. There are 2 inferences that naturally follow. The perusal of this report, first, the matter of vaccination should assume far more importance and attention on the part of the medical profession than it now receives, and secondly, the public should be enlightened and set right in reference to the subject of disease being communicated by vaccination. And there you have it, folks. They put this pus, this poison, this virus into a lot of people. Some of those people died. Some of them got sick. And they used every alibi and excuse to blame everything except that poison. The fact that the other people did not or were not affected doesn't mean anything. Just like today, they simply, their body, for whatever reason, could neutralize the poison or eliminate it. But this is how long the excuses that they're using today in 2012 that they used in 1860, and that's where these people get this from. They have this knowledge, you don't. Before I'm done, you're going to have this knowledge and a whole lot more. I want to tell you, this here you can actually confirm, and this is why I'm using the same book, because I found out there was a museum in Westford, Massachusetts, and I called them and I was asking them about these cases, if they had anything on file. They checked, they said they did not have it and wanted to buy this book. And I said, well, I don't want to sell the book, but I will send you a copy of it, which I did. Actually, what I should have done was sell them the book and kept a copy for myself, but I didn't. But you can verify the story just to know that I don't make this kind of stuff up, and quite frankly, I'm not smart enough to make this kind of stuff up. So that was my report from the Boston Medical and Surgical Journal. It was edited by F.E. Oliver, M.D. and Calvin Ellis, M.D. on Thursday, May 24th, 1860. I will see you in the next time frame of important vaccination news and truth.
Well, does anybody out there still not know what virus is? It is a pus of a disease, period. Nothing else. And I was making a note here, something I thought about. Jonas Salk said in 1956, vaccination is easy to understand. The vaccine is made out of the virus that causes the disease. And there it is. So if they are using any other material than the product of disease or the pus of disease, it's not vaccination. is genocide. I'm going to turn this thing off now. I hope you listen to this a couple times and get it straight, because we got to get this virus stuff down to what it really is. It's not cellular debris. It's not cleaning up the system. It's not particles of anything. It's pus from the product of a disease. I will see you later if I can get this thing to hook up here.